I guess it's kind of the overall idea for the book. Just where did that come from, and just how long has this been in the works for?
So for years now, people have approached me, clients, friends, with, oops, my kids saw something they shouldn't have seen. They accessed something, they ordered something on Amazon, they fell for a scam. All kinds of things happen. And what I realized is even like the most conscientious parents cannot control their kids' access, because even if your kid doesn't have a phone, the friend's kid has a phone, on the bus, someone has a phone. So kids are having access long before their parents are ready for it. And then the other thing that happened was the pandemic, and kids who normally had an hour of screen time now are on all day for school, couple hours in the afternoon for homework and for socialization. I mean, my kid was all of a sudden on Discord, had never been on Discord before, that social media, all day, because that was the only way he could contact his friends. So all those things kind of were swirling around. And then I realized there were books for parents about how to handle tech for kids. And there were some picture books for younger kids, but there was nothing for girls and boys of the tween age who are actually getting their phone to learn how all the complexities about this incredibly like smart device that can do pretty much anything. So that's kind of where the idea for the book came from.
You talk about kind of the complex side of the smartphones at this point too. What are some of the biggest things that maybe, like you said, your clients or stuff has been concerned about with those? I get, like you said, those tween years where they are getting their smartphones. They are like, oh, what's this app? What do these things do? Just what were the biggest concerns that you've seen from it?
So I think scammers, phishing, predators, these people are very good at their jobs. And I even know adults who have fallen prey to scams and lost like thousands and thousands of dollars. And so the same thing happens for kids, except it's their parents' money. So that's one thing. And predators who are looking for naked pictures of their kids and things like that. And then social media, honestly, there's so much research that's coming out now about what social media is doing to our kids, and especially girls in terms of their self-esteem, what effect that has on kids. And so I think those are the major things that parents are really concerned about, helping their kids figure out how to manage with the phones.
How difficult is that self-esteem part? Because I guess I got to go back a minute. When I was in high school and stuff, I guess it would have been like the late 2000s, early 2010s. So we didn't quite have all the smartphone stuff and everything. But my sister, who graduated in 2020, had everything from the get-go. Just how difficult is that part of like the self-esteem that comes from social media? Because no one really shares the negative part of their lives. So it's the positivity, it's the I'm hanging out with friends, or I got this new car. Just how challenging is that part for parents and teens to battle with sometimes?
So it's really interesting. It's true. People don't generally share the terrible parts of their lives. And also, there are all these filters and things that make you look perfect. And when kids see that online, they think, oh, wow, that person's so pretty. And then they look in their mirror and see their real life body and self. And of course, it cannot measure up, because that's a perfectly, that's a perfect image that they shot 100 times and picked the best one. Then they modified it. So there's no way our real lives can live up to this. Same thing with the fancy vacations and the cars. That doesn't even get to what your friends are doing that you're not doing. You see there's a party and you weren't invited. And then it's all over social media, and that just makes you feel bad. So I think there are a lot of things, and kids don't necessarily understand that influencers are doing ads just like commercials on TV. Like, we understand a commercial is trying to sell us something, but it's so subtle online that kids sometimes don't get what's being sold to them. And sometimes that's pretty damaging as well. So I think it's pretty complex. And then the last thing is that kids are, when I was young, we went home after school. Maybe we had friends in the neighborhood. Maybe we were on the phone with our friends, but there was a definite break in our social life. There was downtime. There is no downtime for kids. Their social life is going all the time. So it's really difficult.
Now, getting into the book a little bit here. Obviously, 5 different characters kind of following through their journeys, their backgrounds. Just why was it important to maybe have those different characters with different backgrounds kind of help tell this story along the way too?
So I was thinking, no kid wants to hear from an adult all the time about, they have their parents for that, about, how to stay safe online. So I knew right away I needed to create these kids. And I wanted every kid to find some commonality in the book, whether it's how the kid looks, whether it's their family situation, whether it's their disability. I just wanted everyone to feel like, yes, this book represents them. So that's kind of how the characters came about.
When you were going into like I guess the research and kind of writing this too, what stood out to you the most about what you found or what you wanted to make sure was in the book too?
I think something that I hadn't really thought of as much until I wrote the book was including a section on self-care. We talk a lot about self-care for adults and not so much for kids, but they are going through all the same stresses that we are. Not only is school more stressful, but they have a constant assault of bad news on the internet as well. And all their social dramas and things like that. And when the research started coming out about, the increase in anxiety and depression and lower self-esteem and all these things that are happening because of phones and social media, I was thinking that we really have to be more mindful about telling our kids, like, your phone may make you feel a certain kind of way. And here's how to recognize that. And here's what you can do when you feel that way. And I think that's something that we should be talking to them more. And then also something that's come up more recently is, how to discern credible sources online. It's as a kid, everything on the internet seems like, it's in the New York Times. And so, how can kids be smart consumers about that?
Obviously, there's a lot of stuff facing parents with their kids and the smartphones and everything. This isn't an overnight fix. What is the advice that you do give to parents that are trying to help the navigation? Because obviously this isn't something they can just do once with the kid and the kid's going to remember it forever. It's going to take time and a process more than anything else, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. A lot of parents take some time when the kid gets a phone and maybe they make a contract and they have some rules and guidelines and that's the end of it. But I think that, digital learning is a lifelong process for all of us. We constantly have to stay on top of, new developments, new scams, new dangers, and, how to change our passwords, all these things. And so I like to encourage parents, this is like an every week kind of conversation. Every week there's something in the news. Every week there's a new update or more information, or you heard from a friend who fell for a scam, something like that. And so just make it part of your everyday conversation with your kids, so you can sort of stay informed, and so can they.
Talk about social life as 24/7. There's really no way to break that. I don't think moving forward, just because it's so maybe ingrained in our lives that all of our lives are 24/7 now. What do we do with that part of it for the 12, 13-year-old that just got home from school and saying, hey, what are my friends are doing? Or what do we do with that part of maybe the situation that's ultra challenging, because you don't want to alienate your kid from you either, but it's also like maybe put the phone away for a little bit too, or find some type of calming ground, so to speak.
Yeah, so I highly recommend some screen-free time in the home. So the easiest ones are at meal times. Everyone, including parents, put their phone down. We can really focus on each other. And then at nighttime, somewhere between like 70 and 80% of kids are sleeping with their phones. And that has very major effects on their sleep. And when they have less sleep, there's a lot of negative effects for kids. So giving them that break, and also absolutely nothing good is happening in the middle of the night with your kid on their cell phone. Like, I don't care how important it is for them to have that as the alarm clock. So I think the best way is to kind of have a time, 9:30, 10 o'clock, depending on the age of your kid. The younger kids, by 7:30, let's put it away. Let's focus on, getting ready for bed and family time and disconnecting.
This is probably a very open-ended question, but how did we get to this point? Adults too, are just where the phone is everything to us. I mean, I do it all the time too. Obviously, my job is partly living on social media too, but it's just, I'll put it down. I'll be like, this is weird for a half hour to an hour. And I used to, when I was a kid, didn't look at it for hours on end. Just, I guess it came with time, or just kind of, we all got addicted to it, I guess, in some way.
Well, it wasn't by accident that we got addicted to it. The companies that are, invested in us using our phone have spent a lot of time and money making sure that we cannot put it down. So every time there's a notification, we like to find out about likes and shares. All of these things, when some news pops up on, people are like, well, it's just news, I should find out about the news. That's a distraction. That's immediately you're going to pick up your phone. Every time it dings that you have a text, it's human nature. You're going to want to pick it up. So all of these bells and whistles are making us feel very uncomfortable when we don't pick up our phone. So it's not by accident that this happened. And in some ways, I like to tell parents that, because then in a way you can feel less guilty. Like, what did you do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. You're up against a really big giant who's trying to control your brain to use your phone. And that's not hyperbole. That's actually true. So I think we need to give ourselves a little bit of a break, but then also realize that this is a little out of our control. We need to implement some processes to make sure that we do have some breaks.
And forgive me, I'm forgetting the title of the character, but one of the characters had a learning disability. I think it was dyslexia a little bit. That's another part of the phones where it's trying to balance the educational part of that with the addicting part of it too, isn't it? Kind of figuring out, use the phone for, reading or, audiobooks, but drawing that line. Is that another battle that sometimes, like you said, you can get easily to get distracted with a like, a share, a text message along the way too?
I mean, how many times have you gone on your phone to look something up? And the next thing you know, you're doing something for a half an hour. You never even looked up the thing. You don't even remember the thing you went to go on for. So it's very tricky. I mean, there are incredible things our phone can do that are very handy, very important. Another kid in the book has diabetes, and he uses a monitor on his phone to tell what his blood sugar is. I mean, these are life-saving devices that go through our phone. So, I mean, they're very important to us, but I just think we need to find ways to separate, have time away, develop healthy hobbies away from technology.
We've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but why should a parent buy this book for their kid?
Well, I think this is a gift for parents as much as it is for a kid, because this is complicated stuff. And I was able to take the time and go through the major topics that kids need to learn. So it's really like a guidebook for parents. And then it opens up the dialogue. So it's like, okay, you've read about this, maybe you read it together with your kid, and now you know what to continue the conversation on. That the topic, something interesting came up about, something on Google or fact or fiction or anything. And, you've already talked about it. It's like, oh, remember we talked about that. So, I think that this is something that kids like information. They like to be in charge. They like to be knowledgeable and to be able to make good decisions. So I think for their sake, and I think it's just a bonus for parents, gives them a break and helps them with this difficult topic.
You talked about kind of the information and balance. I remember part in the book where there's that chart of, do I pick up, do I not pick up the phone? And that kind of blew me away too, where I was like, I'd probably pick up on all of them or most of them. I mean, that amazed me kind of, for me looking at that saying, I'm doing that, so my kid will do that too. Is this also maybe subconsciously for parents a way to kind of look at themselves and go, whoa, maybe I use it too much at the same time too? Like, I mean, we're all guilty of it, like, at the same point too.
Yeah, I think we all know we use our phones too much. And, parenting is a hard job. And so I can't really fault a parent for getting distracted on their phone sometimes or scrolling through Facebook. I mean, this is hard. But, I think we do need to look at our habits because we are modeling them for our kids. So it doesn't work to be like, hey, you need to stay off your phone while I'm like scrolling on my phone. Same thing with sleeping with your phone. I think that there are just even small changes parents can make, not even huge ones, but just some small ones to model some behavior for their kids. And I think that goes a long way. In our house, we don't sleep with our phones. And it's been a non-negotiable, and it's actually been pretty easy because we've made it that way. But, I think if it's mixed messages, it's a little bit harder.
How many hours of research kind of went into putting this book together?
Well, I mean, I'm a professor, so I dig research. So I read a lot. I'm constantly looking up new research. So I can't really say, I can't keep track of hours, but I love research. It's important to me. So in all my writing, I love to read the research so I know the foundation, but then present the ideas in a very practical way. So, you don't find, there's a little bit of research in there, but you don't find a ton of statistics or a ton of information like that, because I want it to be just very practical and readable, but I know the research behind it.
when writing a book like that, can that be the challenge of, like you said, the practical way, but also if you get down into the rabbit hole, there's a lot more behind what's in the practical version in the book too.
Oh yeah, I mean, sometimes there'll be like some small thing, like even the self-esteem. How do our phones affect our self-esteem? And it's like, oh yeah, there's an article and there's another one, and then before you know it, the day is gone. But for me, I enjoy that, and it's important for me to be knowledgeable. And parents are not going to have the time for that, and also probably don't even have access to the same articles, in the library. So for me, I enjoy that. But yeah, a whole day could go by, and I'm like, I've done nothing, but I learned something, so that's okay.
Anything else people should know about the book too?
Um, it's just the beginning. I think I cover a lot, but it was important for it to be readable and interesting and fun for kids. So get it, read it, keep it as a guide, look up, okay, yeah, what was it about passwords you were supposed to do? But remember, it's just the beginning.